This is Johnny and Jose with Tiger Bomb MMA, and we are back with UFC Fight Night Holloway versus Cater, which would actually be UFC on ABC One. It's been quite a bit of a delay for the 2021 year, but we're here with the pretty good main event at 145, Holloway versus Cater. We're going down the whole card, giving you our predictions. We're going to try to break the card down as fast as possible just because we've got a lot of UFC to cover this month. So, without further ado, we'll start with the first matchup of the night, which is at 145. We've got Jacob Kilburn versus Austin Lingo. Get to the point. I think Austin Lingo is going to take this one. I didn't like Jacob Kilburn's last performance. He fought against Billy Q, and I just can't get that ass beating out of my head. Like, he looked like a fish out of water. Austin Lingo's similar when he fought Yusuf Zalal. He was, I believe, the favorite he was the favorite for sure. I don't know how big of a favorite it was versus Yusuf, but he got schooled pretty bad. I think Yusuf took the fight on short notice. So it is a close matchup, at least on paper. And just, I think Austin has enough to beat Jacob Kilburn.
I agree. His killer, the killer Kilburn nickname aside, I don't think he's much of a killer at all. And this is, a lot of people are going to say this is recency bias. It's not really that recent. It was over a year ago that he got his ass beat by Billy Q's, and Billy Q, I don't think he had the sort of hype that he had, a short while ago when he beat the Alpha Ginger. So that really wasn't, ultra, the Billy Q that, that had that hype behind him. So I think that makes that loss, a lot, um, have, more weight, at least for me. Even though, losing to Yusuf Salal, I don't see as bad, given how, the type of hype and, the streak that Yusuf was on, and that was also it wasn't bad. It was less than a year ago. So, but I think that I agree. I think Lingo is going to have a better pace. I think he has more power, and I think he's going to just take control of the fight, take control in the cage, and just eke out probably a decision. I would say if Kilburn does manage to take a round, I wouldn't be surprised. But I see Austin dominating the fight, getting that decision.
Next up, we've got Sarah Morass versus Vanessa Mello, taking place at 135. I'm not confident in either of these two ladies. I would say I'm leaning more towards Sarah just because she will definitely try to clinch up and go for takedowns. We've seen her beat better women. She just recently beat Jojua, Liana Jojua, essentially the same way. She took her down, beat her up. They're both on some weird streaks. Um, Sarah Morass recently fought Soraya Eubanks. I thought she looked good. Not well, not good's not the word. She looked okay. I thought she might have taken a round from Sarge. Uh, but Vanessa Mello, she's on a 3 fight losing streak. I'm just not seeing anything here between these two. For sure, skipping this fight, but I've got Sarah Morass. I'm gonna say maybe third round, just decision. I'll go with Sarah Morass decision.
This is a close fight, and that isn't necessarily a positive thing. Just because this is, they're really scraping the bottom of the barrel for this. Um, I would agree with you in that I would also take Moras. I mean, her nickname Cheesecake is, I think, pretty appropriate because that's the, that's the expression you get, when you punch her in the face a few times. It's like, oh, cheesecake. Um, but Vanessa Mello, she's 0-3 in the UFC. Uh, and while she has lost to, I want to say, semi decent competition, um, I think Moras has lost to overall. She's faced better competition and actually has a win in her last 5 fights. The loss to Sarge, while it doesn't look good, we have seen what Sarge is capable of. But yeah, I would not place a bet on this fight. If I had to place a bet, it would be on the over because I don't see either of these ladies finishing the other, either you know by striking or by submission. They're both way over the hill at 32 years in this division. Um, and neither, I think, yeah, this is a coin flip, what I like to call bathroom break fights. So if this is the type of thing you enjoy, um, I say just sit back and enjoy it. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they both get cut. Even if one of them does win.
Next matchup is at 170 at welterweight. David Zawada versus Razaman Ameev. Interesting matchup. This is Ameev's second straight German that he'll be fighting, and it's actually Zawada's second straight Russian that he's fighting. David Zawada submitted, I believe it was Khabib's cousin. You can fact check me on that. But yeah, he submitted a Nurmagomedov, so that is fresh on people's minds. But I've got Razaman Ameev to take this matchup. I think he's just really good at what he does. He's a very good decisioner. He's really good at getting the decision. He just attempts takedowns. He ties you up against the cage. He goes for the clinch. He does enough to win the decision overall. I don't think David's going to be able to really outwork Razaman. I think he'll be smart to attack the legs. I saw Tony Martin attack Ameev's legs, and that's how he got the decision over Ameev. But I think Ameev's gotten wise to that, so he's gonna just do what he does and go for takedowns while in stall and close to a decision.
I agree. I see Amiv as a favorite here for good reason. I think he's just going to grind it out. His path to victory here is controlling Dave Zawada and just wearing him out. It should be, it's not going to be a barn burner of a fight. I see this thing going 30-27, just Zawada getting worn out. He might, just depending if he's been training in his BJJ, he might maybe make it interesting and go for some submission attempts off his back or up against the cage. Hopefully, he does make it interesting and not just let Amib have his way with him. But yeah, so my pick is also Amib.
Next up at heavyweight, we've got Carlos Felipe versus Justin Taffa, a battle of the big boys. I'm actually really interested in watching this fight just because I've been kind of high on Carlos. I like the way he fights. I like his attitude. I like how he just goes out there and slings leather. He has a pretty decent gas tank when it comes to just striking. It kind of reminds me, not that he's at the level of Shogun when it comes to striking, but Shogun can strike for 5 rounds, no problem. It looks like Carlos has that kind of gas tank. When you throw in takedowns in there, it gets a little iffy with him as he lost to Spivak. That's his one loss. He looked pretty good, but Spivak kind of put it on him with that long jab and long range punches and the takedowns, of course. Justin Taffa, what can I really say about Justin? He's just a carbon copy of Mark Hunt, but not as good. So I am gonna go with Carlos Felipe. He's gonna. I wouldn't say he's gonna knock him out. I think it's gonna be kind of tough to knock out Justin Taffa. I know he's been knocked out cold before by Yargan de Castro, but I don't think he saw that coming. Carlos more of a volume guy, so I got Carlos to win by a decision.
I also agree. I think Felipe, Carlos Boy Felipe, is going to have the gas tank to decision Tafa. That's assuming Tafa doesn't land a bomb in the first round. Just because looking at Tafa's record, he's a he's the type of fighter that's either going to knock you out or going to get knocked out. Um, his last 5 fights, he has one, two, three, yeah, exactly 4 KO TKO wins, and his one loss was to Jorgen de Castro by KO. Carlos Felipe, he did show in his last fight against Jorgen de Castro that if his opponent is solely looking to knock him out and runs out of cardio halfway through the first round, then he does have what it takes to edge out a decision. Go for the 3 round. Not that he had sea level prime Kane type cardio and pressure, but he did manage to outstrike Jorgen. So I'm seeing if Justin Taffa doesn't land his big bombs, if he can get past that, then I see Carlos Felipe just not grinding out a decision, but uh, yeah, edging out a decision, possibly 30-27. It's all really just depending on how good a shape Justin Taffa comes in and if he's looking for a brawl or not.
On our next matchup at welterweight, very interesting matchup. We've got Omari Akhmedov versus Tom Breeze, and this is a huge test for Tom Breeze. Omari Akhmedov, before the Weidman fight, he was the man, right? He was the up and coming, well, not up and coming, but he was trending upwards. He had a lot of good wins on his record. He beat Ian Heinisch, Tim Bosch, Zach Cumming. Uh, well, before before the allegations, Abdul Razak Al Hassan, that guy was a killer back then. But yeah, the Weidman fight, it left a really bad taste in my mouth. Like he couldn't finish a washed up Weidman, which I like that nickname now that I said it out loud. Uh, this is really Tom Breeze, his fight to lose. As we know, Tom Breeze has some issues with anxiety. So if he comes to fight and he's got all that figured out, I think he's the better fighter. At this point in time, we've seen him lose to guys he shouldn't have lost to. He lost to Sean Strickland, which I wouldn't say that's a guy he shouldn't lose to. That's a really close fight. I thought Brendan Allen was going to lose. I thought he was going to beat up Brendan Allen pretty easily. And then we saw what he did to KB Bular. Now, Omari Akhmedov is no KB Bular, but I still think Tom Breeze has enough as long as he comes with the right mindset, of course. I think he has the better gas tank, better striking, of course. He's the bigger guy, so he should be able to beat Omari Akhmedov. I don't think he'll finish him. I think this will go all 3 rounds because Omari will try to use his wrestling. And I see Tom Breeze winning this one by decision.
I agree. Tom Breeze should know exactly what Akhmedov is going to bring to the table, and that's nonstop takedowns. So if he's worked on his, I see his path to victory being not necessarily avoiding the takedowns, but just defending the takedowns. If he can defend the takedowns in the first and second round, then Omari Akhmedov, I think he's going to get desperate in that third round. And on the feet, I think Tom Breeze can piece him up. Um, if he does so, then I really see a pretty easy path to victory. So hopefully he worked on that takedown defense. I don't think we'll see another, repeat of the KB Bular fight because that was total BS. That guy did not belong anywhere near the octagon, but they fed him to Tom Breeze. Uh, but on the same note, yeah, man, you, yeah, that loss to Chris Weidman, uh, I think he should have gotten cut because of that, man. You lose to Chris Weidman, in 2020 and beyond, that should be grounds to get cut by the UFC by far. But it could have been that. Excuse me. Sorry, dry throat. Could have been that was Akhmedov's one sole, bad fight, and he's going to come in like a machine. But I don't see it happening. I see Tom Breeze taking him out. So I shall also take Tom Breeze by decision.
Our next matchup, we've got Wu Yanan versus Jocelyn Edwards. Jocelyn Edwards coming in here. Sorry, the sirens. I live in a bad neighborhood. But yeah, Jocelyn Edwards coming in here. fighting Mulan. Interesting because never heard of this lady. I did some tape watch, and there's not really much there. She's got some decent striking, a really good body kick. She beat up who I thought was Pearl Gonzalez, but it turns out it's like Pamela Gonzalez with a body kick and punches. Really, they just brought her in here to showcase another a Chinese a superstar in the making in Wu Yanan. I think we're going to see an upset here more often than not. You get underdogs in women's MMA coming through, so if you're ballsy enough, go for it. I would say give her a shot. I think it's going to be mostly a striking battle either way. So yeah, I'll go with the underdog in Edwards. I'm going to say, yeah, decision.
I disagree. I actually think Yanan Wu has a little bit, and this isn't really saying much, but I think she's going to have the footwork and the speed to outland Edwards, unless Edwards has been, working on her kicking defense and her footwork herself. I don't think this is going to the ground at all. I think Yunnan is going to just have the volume to take the decision here. I would not bet on Yunnan Wu or the other side. I'm not I wouldn't be confident in picking either. But I am taking. I would take the over for sure because I don't see a finish in this fight.
And then speaking of not confident, we've got another matchup here at 185. We've got Phil Hawes versus Nasruddin Imavov. And the reason I say that is because with our last performance that we've seen from Phil Haas, he came in through, destroyed Jacob Malcorn in the first round. He has a tendency to do that. He is a powerhouse. This guy is. He's fast. He's got great striking. He hits hard. But I am very concerned. Like I picked against him. I thought Jacob was going to do what I think Nasruddin is going to do. I think Nasruddin will avoid getting hit like the plague in that first round. Clinch up Phil Hawes. Phil Hawes is built like whatever fucking analogy you want to use, but he's a huge guy. He's ripped. So I think Nasruddin's going to tie him up. He's a taller guy. He's 6'3" against a 6 foot tall Phil Hawes. So I think he's going to tire him out and then just kind of volume piece him up and yeah, just coast on to maybe a late stoppage, maybe a late TKO. Phil Haas, despite him having a good showing against a guy who was what 4-0 at the time, I'm still not sold on the fact that he is anything more than just a one round fighter. Just because I've seen him lose once the fight goes on. Cuban Missile Crisis knocked him out in the second round, if I recall, after he just got exhausted. Phil Hawes just wailed on him and couldn't get him out of there. And then he gets head kicked into oblivion. So I see Nasruddin pulling off the upset in this fight. As long as he fights smart, tucks his chin, I think he has enough to draw out the fight and then take Phil's out or take Phil Hawes out in the later rounds.
I will also be taking Imavov as the underdog. Or do you want me to stop for a few seconds? And
Go for it now.
I agree. I will also be taking Imavov. I think his nickname, the Russian Sniper, serves him well. Unlike Phil Haas' style, which is more of a brawling style, I would say. Uh, Imavov has, that he tends to pick his shots, and I think having um, let's see, I think having the actually funny thing, looks like Phil Haas allegedly has the reach advantage, but I don't know about that. But Imavov for sure has the height advantage. I think he's going to be able to pick his shots and just wear out Haas versus Haas. I think is a little past his prime, if you could call it that. Being 32 years old, I think Imavov being younger and being having the same amount of experience, I think that's going to serve him well in this fight. In this fight going forward in his career. But I think this is, where I think people are going to see Imavov and take note of him. I think he has a way brighter future than Phil Hawes, and I think he takes this via decision. So I'm choosing the underdog here.
Right, the opener to the main card, we've got the battle of the names, Punahele Soriano versus Dusko Todorovic. Interesting matchup. They're both undefeated, so one of these guys has to lose the O. They're both coming in here. I was going to say with some hype, but not necessarily. I think Dusko has more hype coming into this matchup. I like Punahele. I love saying that name, Punahele Soriano. I really like the guy. I like the way he fights, but I think Dusko just has every advantage. I think he's a taller guy. He's got the well, I guess they have the same. No. They he has a bit of a reach advantage, about 1.5 inch reach advantage. He appears to have the better grappling. He just looks like a breakout star the way he fights. Punahele, he has the knockout. He pieces you up in the clinch and against the cage, but I don't think it's going to be enough. I think he's going to lose the O. Dusko's going to more than likely TKO him round number two. I want to say even possible submission. I'm actually going to change that. I do think Dusko's going to take him down, probably mount him, beat him up a little bit. Punahele will turn around, give up his neck, and then I'm going to say round two, rear naked choke. Dusko.
I agree. I think Dusko will take this fight via decision. The way he's going to do that is he's going to need to avoid the big bombs that story time um, is going to bring. I think his height is going to help a bit. Uh, looks like he doesn't have much of a reach advantage. And not to discount Pulahele, Punahele. He's a Hawaiian fighter. Hawaiian fighters, they come in tough. But I think Dusko just has a little bit better technique, and I think he'll be able to, as long as he doesn't, go in there with the idea of brawling with Punahele, which I don't think he will. He should be able to uh, just. Mm, I would say it should be a close decision, 29-28, just because that first round, I think Punahele is going to bring it. But then I think, as long as they get past that first round, Dusko's going to take over. So you should get those last two rounds, thereby, winning via decision.
Just a quick yes or no. Do you think Dusko's a parlay piece or no?
Um, that's a very good question. I think I would say so. I'm not. It's a pretty. I think it's a pretty close matchup. But sure, why not? I live on the edge, so I'd say hell yes.
Our next matchup, highly anticipated return of New Manta Joaquin Buckley versus Alessio Di Chirico. Alessio Di Chirico, he's like the creative fighter. If you were to just leave him be and not max out his stats, just because he's not very impressive. He gets the job done as a fighter with zero stats can do sometimes, but he's just nothing very impressive about him. I actually picked him to beat Zach Cummings, and he let me down. He just stood there and he got head kicked and dropped, and God, that was like never again. For those reasons alone, not because Joaquin Buckley's been on a tear, knocking dudes out. He looks like he's coming into his own. I think just because Alessio let me down that last fight, just for standing there and taking that head kick and getting dropped, he's going to lose this matchup. In seriousness, it's a closer matchup because Joaquin Buckley, there's always the moment where a guy starts buying into his own hype. I don't think this is the moment, but I think it's coming with Joaquin. There's some things I like about the guy. I've been pretty high on him since the actually since the Holland fight. I actually like the way he fought against Holland. Do I ever think he can beat Holland? No, I think Holland's just on a different level now. But with Joaquin, he's got a lot of good attributes, right? He's very fast, he's powerful. Seems to have a really good gas tank despite being built like a brick shit house. And on top of that, he throws a lot of volume sometimes, a lot of power punches, doesn't seem to exhaust himself. So I think isn't going to knock out Alessio. Alessio's pretty tough, so I will say Joaquin Buckley by decision.
I agree. I also foresee Buckley getting the W here. And despite um, the Chirico losing to Zach Cummings, which was also a huge letdown. He also did get pieced together by Holland, or pieced apart by Holland. But he got decision by him versus uh, Buckley getting KO'd by him. So that I think that says a lot. And while he doesn't have the greatest chin, I think he has enough to not allow Buckley to get knocked out. But I don't think he has enough to actually take Buckley out. So I think Buckley will win by points. So I'll take Buckley by decision as well.
Next matchup in the welterweight division with the highly anticipated return of Santiago Ponzinibbio. Looks like he changed his name. It used to be the Gentle Boa. Now it's the Argentine Dagger, at least from the UFC website. Coming up against Li Jinliang. Very interesting matchup. It's essentially this the active fighter versus the inactive fighter. And that narrative has been used a lot in the past. I don't like looking at it that way because I think as of late we've seen a lot of fighters, at least in this era, who have taken a lot of time off, like 2 years off, as Santiago did. They come back a bit more refreshed, like their bodies have healed up, and they seem to be a bit better. Same thing we've seen with, say, T City, Brian Ortega. He came back after a couple years from an ass whooping to come back and beat the crap out of um, Korean Zombie. As for Li Jing Liang, I've always been a fan of his. He's got really good boxing. The only thing is that when he doesn't fight in China, he seems to magically not perform. It's always something that I've kind of noticed about him. With Santiago, we know what he's going to do. He's a really good striker. He's got laser beam accuracy. I think he's going to piece up Li Jing Liang, and I think he's going to knock him out. I'm going to say round number three because Lee is pretty damn tough. He gets dropped nearly every fight, but he seems to come back. I don't think he's going to make the comeback this time. Santiago knockout round three.
I agree. I think Pons Nibio, who I am now nicknaming the Pons, you heard it here first. So I agree. I agree that Santiago, the Ponzinibbio, will also take this fight. Now, there is that whole long layoff. It's been uh, actually it's a very it's actually sort of the same situation. Well, not really the same situation. Ponzinibbio in his last fight, he actually beat down Neil Magny versus what's his name? You just said his name. T City.
Oh, Brian Ortega.
Brian Ortega. He came back from a 2-year layoff after an ass whooping. So it's a little bit different. But so you have to. It's a little hard to predict in that sense. What kind of Ponzinibbio are we going to see? Are we going to see the same guy? Did he have all those injuries and have enough time to recover, or do you have a bunch of injuries and now he's a little bit tentative and is going to be a little bit shy?
Actually, to cut
Uh,
you off real quick, you know who else came back from a nearly 2 year layoff and beat Li Jing Liang? Neil Magny.
um, oh, really?
Yeah, he came back, beat Lee. Might be a trend going on with Lee losing to guys taking years off.
Huh? Maybe. But I think Ponzinibbio, despite the layoff, is going to come in. I don't know how aggressive. Excuse me. I don't know how aggressive he's going to come in. But I think it's well within realist being real about him being the favorite. I don't know if he'll get the knockout just because Lee has a decent chin. I want to say not great, but then again, Ponzinibbio, who knows? Maybe he ate his cans of spinach with his time off, and maybe he's got help rejuvenate him. Who knows? But One thing to take note is that he's not exactly. I don't know. Maybe his prime, maybe out of his prime. So we'll see because he's 34 years old now. So he's kind of, I think he only has a few years left to make that title run. He's really got to jump on that horse and ride that pony, so to speak. This is very difficult. This is a difficult one. I look forward to it, but I mean, I see what Jing Liang is bringing to the table, but uh, yeah, the outcome of this fight definitely is. I think this is Ponzinibbio's fight to lose for sure. So it all just depends on how well he comes in prepared. If he's the Ponzinibbio of old, then it's gonna be a long night for Lee. But I have the Pons taking it by at least decision, if not knockout. Depending on how bloodthirsty he is.
With our co-main event of the evening, we've got Carlos, the natural-born killer Condit versus Matt, the immortal Brown. And I think just for funds, I'm gonna be playing death metal while this fight plays out because that's gonna be it personified. Death metal inside the cage. We elbow people. It's just I get excited just even thinking about the matchup. This matchup was supposed to happen a couple years back when Matt Brown was on that incredible win streak. I was pretty worried because I'm a huge Carlos Condit fan. It's one of my favorite fighters of all time. Pussed out and bought some of his coffee, which is pretty good, even though I don't even drink coffee. But I got Carlos winning this matchup just for the simple fact this is kind of a mirror matchup. They're both good strikers. They both love elbows. Condit's a little bit more unorthodox. He's spinny shit. He's the originator of the spinny shit. And then we've got Matt Brown, who is just a tough guy. He doesn't give a damn. He just goes after you sometimes. For that reason, I think he's going to get caught by Carlos. It's just that Matt, he has been knocked out a couple times in the last few years, opposed to Carlos, who's got one of the most legendary chins of all time. He hasn't had the greatest luck in the cage recently. He did just recently beat Court McGee, but before that, he had a oh man, I don't even like looking at his record because it's a lot of red within the last few years. But he always comes out and performs. I think he's got enough left in the tank at this point. Unfortunately, Matt Brown seems like he's headed back into retirement. I don't wish him to get knocked out just because I love Matt Brown. He's one of my other favorite fighters just for that reason. He's an elbow machine. Even looking back at the fight with him and Dirty Bird Means, after Dirty Bird called him out for the best elbows in the welterweight division, Matt Brown came in here, showed him who had the better elbows, and then eventually choked him out. So I, for that reason, and the fight with that young kid Eric Silva, I always love Matt Brown. Unfortunately, I see Carlos Condit winning this fight by knockout. I would say round number two.
I also agree. I am taking Carlos. I don't know if he will naturally born kill him though. I think he will have enough to maybe take the decision 29-28. I see them both with similar skill sets, but I think Carlos has. He's a little bit more technical. I think his strikes are and his footwork is a bit more refined now. I also note I also love Matt Brown, man. He's brought the violence over the years. Um, he I think he was the one who initially elbowed Diego Sanchez into that next dimension that he's in currently with that downward elbow. I think Diego's spirit bounced off the mat and back into him. If you haven't seen that, that's worth checking out. But I see, I did enjoy, and I was rooting for Carlos against Court McGee because, Carlos, back in the day, he did bring it. He was a very exciting fighter, and I think from at least from what I saw, I think the Court McGee fight kind of brought him out of that funk. Not just the win, but just I don't know what it is. He was in some sort of funk that He
like that
just
fighter depression when you're on a 4+ fight losing streak.
I think it was more than that. I think it had to do with him getting into that rhythm again. I think he's going to be riding that into this fight. And I think he's going to just outclass Matt Brown, unfortunately. Um, and I know Carlos is only 36 years old. You know, it seems a lot, which isn't really too old, but in MMA, you know, considering how many battles he's been in, he's up there. So is Matt Brown. You know, he's 40 years old, so I see that playing into this fight as well. Even though, you know, being 36 to 40 isn't that big of a age jump or age discrepancy, but I think that's going to definitely play a part in this fight. But I see Carlos taking the decision. I don't know if he's gonna, you know, break his jaw like who was it? I think it was Cowboy Cerrone that broke his jaw with a kick. I don't know if Carlos has that sort of power anymore. But unless he went back and you know, saw that happened, and you know, if the light bulb went out and he's been working on his uh, you know, his high kicks, then yeah, Matt has something to worry about. But other than that, I'm also taking Carlos Condit. Close fight, but very interesting.
In our main event of the evening, we've got Max Holloway versus Calvin Kattar at 145. Max Holloway coming back into the cage looking to get a win after his 2 fights with Volkanovski, the last one being very controversial. And Calvin Kattar coming in here trying to look for a title shot, especially if he can beat Max Holloway, the former champion, the guy people think should be champion because of that controversial fight. Uh, Calvin could be knocking on the door for the next title fight, skipping over Zabit because Zabit's a little inactive. But he's on a 2 fight win streak. This one is an interesting matchup, and I'll try to break it down as best as I can, just because the narrative right now, and I know a lot of people are really high on Max, especially after that matchup with Volkanovski, where he did look the best he's ever looked. There was talks about him doing Zoom training and not really working things out and in person, but whatever the hell he did, he looked good. He worked on his kicks. He was actually throwing low kicks, which was something that wasn't something that he actually threw often. So he is a deserved number one in that division. Uh, there's a little thing about Max though that does concern me, and that's the fact that he's what 29 years old and he's been through a lot of wars in his young age. Uh, Calvin, we know his boxing is very crisp, very good. He's got a very gorgeous 1-2. It's very long, very precise. Throws uppercuts when he needs to. And one thing I took notice of is that uh, this might be one of the very few times Max has the reach disadvantage, right? He's got a 69-inch reach. Calvin Cage's got a 62 or 72-inch reach, and they are identical in height. They're 5'11" each. And I wonder, like, is that something that's going to hinder Max? Because hinder or Max usually is the taller guy in there in those matchups, especially even with Volkanovski. Volkanovski being an alpha midget, um, he had trouble the first fight. Now, this matchup really does revolve around Max Holloway, right? Will Max Holloway continue that trend where he left off during that last fight with Volkanovski, where he looked incredible? And then we've seen Calvin Kattar have some deficiencies. We've seen him lose to Zabit. We've seen him lose to Moicano. The leg kicks are a problem for him sometimes. Even in the fight with Jeremy Stevens, a fight that he brutally knocked out Stevens, he didn't look great because he tends to be a bit tentative. What I might say might be a bit controversial, but I actually think Calvin Kattar will be the first man to knock out clean Max Holloway. Ignore the train that's passing by. I live in a bad neighborhood. But yeah, I think Calvin Kattar is going to knock him out. My main reasons for that is that Max has taken a lot of punishment. So I think Calvin's going to catch him and surprise everybody. So I see Calvin Kattar come in here knocking out Max Holloway, and then we have a new contender at featherweight.
Oddly enough, I also agree. I see Calvin as the up and comer, while Max, I think, not just due to his last two fights with Volkanovski, um, he, yeah, I mean that first fight with Volkanovski he clearly lost, and the second fight he did better, but I disagree. I don't think he beat Volkanovski. I think Volkanovski he didn't perform as well as he did in the first fight, but I don't think Max should be the champion as it currently stands. I think Calvin is, as I mentioned, on his way up. I think he has. I mean, there's a beat loss. I'm not reading too much into that. Um, it was quite a while back, and Zabit really hasn't done much, if anything, since. So I think a clear cut win here would put him in very good position to fight Volkanovski next. Put him above both Zabit and I think T City. And I think Holloway being 29 years old, I think he's past his prime at this point, just due to all the wars that he's had, and he's fought top level competition. So there's really nothing to scoff at, with regards to Max. But I think Calvin has sharper boxing, um, and as long as he defends those leg kicks, I think he definitely has the potential to outbox Max. I mean, the only one of the only advantages Max has is all his 5 round fight experience. So he knows what to expect in there, regardless of whatever is going on with the opponent. He knows how to, he knows when he's losing, when to push the pace and whatnot. Versus Calvin, he may not, uh, unless he's blows his load in the first 2 or 3 rounds, which I don't foresee him doing. I think he's a smarter fighter than that, but um, I would see that being the only advantage Max has in this fight, unless he somehow upped his game even more and is riding that momentum wave from his last fight, which he did look better. Um, but I think his championship days are past him at this point, unfortunately, just because of the competition at the weight. And I think a rematch, I think Calvin takes this fight, and I think Holloway either rematches T City or he fights Zabit next, because Zabit, I don't know what that guy's doing. Or maybe he fights what's that guy, Yair Rodriguez, if he ever comes back.
Once his suspension's over.
Yeah. So who knows? But unfortunately, yeah. I mean, as much as I like Max and everything he stands for, I see Calvin Cater on the way up, and I see him as depending on uh, how well he fights here and how big of an impression he makes against Max as the next contender for Volkanovski's title.
That's been our predictions for UFC on ABC One, Holloway versus Cater. It's going to be an interesting card. I'm super excited to get UFC back. I've been kind of stir crazy, not knowing what to do on my Saturday nights, but this whole month of January, we've got a whole ton of fights to cover. So come back and join us next coming weeks to go over those fights. As for this card, that's been us from Tiger Bomb MMA. We'd appreciate it if you liked, shared, comment, subscribed, whatever. But yeah, that's been us, Johnny and Jose from Tiger Bomb MMA, and you have a good one.